Good evening, ladies and gents. My name is Graham Moffat, the Director of Rugby with Rugby Alberta, and I've got the privilege to just do a few introductions to the club, the emPowering Prairies Club Development Series, which we're kind of excited to get underway. While I anticipate you're all probably suffering from a bit of Zoom fatigue or Microsoft Teams fatigue, it seems to be how we work at the moment. We're particularly excited to work collaboratively with our friends in the prairies in Saskatchewan and Manitoba, to offer this series. We're definitely all stronger together. And I think if one of the serendipities that's come out of this global pandemic at the moment is our ability to collaborate across the country, work together, be creative thieves and steal stuff that other provinces are doing and tweak it and make it our own, and and make it maybe better or fit the context that we're in. So just a couple of things. Tonight we're joined by a couple of presenters. And we're not here just to talk at you, to tell you things. We're hoping that we can potentially provide you with some tools that will be useful. We're not on here claiming to be the holder of all wisdom and all knowledge. I hope that you do learn from the presenters, and I hope that when we go into our breakout rooms that you'll learn from each other as well. We know that there's some fantastic clubs around the prairies doing some really good things, and I think the key thing for us is the ability to develop some cross-province relationships, some cross-club relationships, and hear what some of the good things that you're going on, and probably some of the challenges as well. So I know that generally we've been conditioned to be consumer critics. I hope that you're not just a consumer tonight. I hope you'll be a participant, and I hope that you'll be actively engaged. And we're going to get things underway. I think most people have kind of joined on a laptop. We've got a couple of people that have kind of dialed in, which is great. But all I'm going to ask right now, on a scale of 1 to 7, so along the bottom there, next to the green button where it says share screen, there's a chat function. What I'm going to ask is, on a scale of 1 to 7, I would like to put where you are at currently, of maybe a focus or energy level. 1 being like you're exhausted, you're lying in your bed, you're doing this because you said that you would. Or 7 is that you're super pumped and excited. Or a 3 or a 4 might be that you've just run into your quiet spot, you've got your phone in your hand, your kids are running in and out, you're trying to get them into bed. Where are you sitting on the scale? Oh, awesome. Good to see Patrick's excited. He's in at about a 7. Oh, bed.
Did I see an 8? Well done.
Yeah. He's at a 3, bedtime for the twins. He's probably going to bed right after that as well. So yeah, lots of stuff on the go. So no, thanks for that. Now, the next thing I would ask that you do, we've all probably got different wants and needs. And what I can maybe do, if you can just ask, so we can record this and make sure that we can tweak or maybe change our path a little bit with the workshop topics that we're going to cover to best serve you. Can you just pop in the chat one thing that you would really like to take away from the 4-week webinar series? If you could pop that in the chat as well, that would be great. Yeah, I'll kick you off. There's what I'm looking for. Just give you another few seconds for thinking. Yeah, so just as you kind of keep putting your comments in the chat, and I appreciate you doing that. It gives us a good idea to make sure that we deliver what you get. And I just got a couple of guests. So just to go over the format for tonight, there'll be a mixture tonight of some presentations and also some breakout rooms as well. And first of all, I just want to just highlight a few people that have really helped pull this together. You know, special thanks to Scott Harland, who will be our kind of key kind of presenter speaker tonight. Scott joins us from Rugby's America North. He told me just before we came on, he's the training manager for, and we're delighted that Scott can't travel right now, because Scott usually spends more than half the year on the road in far more exotic places than Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. But he's in lockdown, so Scott's agreed to be with us for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So he's got some really good ideas, and we've had a couple of pre-calls with Scott. And we're really excited about the value that he's going to add tonight. So Bill, thanks for joining us, Scott, and we look forward to having you with us over the coming weeks. Also, just to highlight a few of the staff that have been really active and engaged in doing this. Patrick, from Rugby Manitoba, our Aussie friend here. We've got Andrew Shaw as well, the new RDO for SAS Rugby, who's going to be a great addition. So, great thanks to Andrew particularly for putting the club handbook together. And for those that have jumped on late or don't have a copy of it, I'm going to pop it in the chat here in just a second, or maybe one of the co-hosts will beat me to it because they're far more tech savvy than I am. Pete Houlihan as well, who's the rookie rugby manager for Rugby Alberta, working really closely with Rugby Alberta. And also to Hubert Bidens. Hubert's on here. Hubert's the new rugby development officer for Alberta. So thanks to everybody. So everyone's working collaboratively. I know Christy Sue's been involved in these chats too. I'm not sure if she's on here or not. There's too many screens to flick through. And obviously to Jordan as well for his contribution. And we're excited to get everything going. So in your chat function right now, you'll see the course handbook is being put up there. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it or download it, there's some fantastic information, and we'll be working through a bit of that tonight. So what's on the agenda for tonight? We're going to cover off the introductions done. We're going to switch over to Patrick to kind of go over a bit of a course roadmap. We'll then have a kind of club health check, which will be the main part that Scott will facilitate. And then we'll look to some value-based decision making, which will be facilitated by Pete. So when we do go into our breakout rooms, the one thing I will ask is that we probably don't have enough time to circle back with a lot of the key findings from every single breakout room. So I'll just ask that when we go into the breakout rooms, and I will give you a reminder, if one of you could just nominate yourself to be the spokesperson, and then just to jot down and again pop in the chat function a number of different or a couple of the key highlights or takeaways from your group discussion, and that may lead to some further dialogue. So I'm going to go on mute now, which will probably please you all. I'm going to pass you over to Patrick. And just one thing, maybe when the presenters are speaking, if you want to just go on to speaker view, if they do choose to share their screens, it might be easier for you to see. So just on the top right hand corner where it says view, I would switch that over to speaker, and then we should be good. So Patrick, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, does everybody see the presentation we did there? Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to go over just the course sort of outline and just a few sort of housekeeping, not necessarily housekeeping, but just explain a few things just as we go into this. As Moff already suggested, like, there's plenty of scope for us to change and pivot our direction if you guys demand it. That's basically it. Like, we're very reactive. We're happy. We're trying to help you guys. So if there's something you guys want to learn about, the key is just to let us know, and we can find some people to come in and do that. But as we go, it's just, a rugby club development. So today I'm just going to go through just a bit of general info, course outline, just introduce some of our subject matter experts that we are going to be talking with, explain the worksheets and some of the resources. Another one that is a useful sort of behavioural model, to something to keep in consideration, because it's all good to make all these plans, but ultimately things have to get done, and there's reasons why things don't happen. And we can get into that. And then finally just touch on, where do you go for help, because this is not this is not necessarily a comprehensive document. It's really just the time we have. This is going to be a quick overview. So that's where it's important that you guys just know where to go if you do find yourselves stuck. So all right, let's get in. Yeah, so obviously this course is just designed to provide a bit of insight as to how to run a rugby club. What are the best practices around the club? What's going to work for your club is the key, right? It's not all clubs are equal. Clubs in Manitoba may be very different to clubs in Calgary or Saskatchewan and Edmonton, right? So, there's no comprehensive document. We just got to basically, introduce you to some concepts and some ideas and some people. So hopefully you guys can make it work from there. As the course goes, obviously we're going through the month of February. First week, we're well familiar with the content tonight, but week 2, we're going to sort of move on to the theme of places, which will involve a bit of structure and board talk. How do we ensure that we're still focusing on governance and getting things done and not mixing the two up? The importance of policy and codes of conduct, things like that, they're very vital, but they're often overlooked in amateur sport. Also, we're going to go through the planning and review, like what is a technical plan, what is a strategic plan, what is an operational plan, and why are they important, and how do we review them as we go. We're going to break in week 3, which will allow everybody to catch up, or maybe it's a chance for you guys to meet with your own clubs. Whatever you do, obviously up to you. Week 4, we're going to talk about job descriptions and the importance of that. We're going to go into volunteer recruitment and a lot of the personal development. How can we reward our volunteers through perhaps personal things they want to achieve, making people better. We are constantly trying to make players better rugby players. So how do we make our administrators better administrators? And just a quick touch on succession planning there, because ultimately everybody has a short, a finite lifespan in the game. So we're going to get to that. The final week at the moment is set for funding, marketing, events, and community partnerships. So we have some valuable templates and speakers coming in to talk about that, which we hope is useful. So obviously, if there's something you want to see on this list, you got to reach out to one of your facilitators, whichever province you're lying in, and basically we'll get to go from there. So some of our guest speakers, just to quickly introduce, we obviously have Scott tonight. We have Maria Sampson, who's a board member of Rugby Canada, coming in next week. We have Paul Hunter as well, who's the community rugby manager for Rugby Canada. So that's a great chance for you guys to see some of the work that Rugby Canada are actually doing. And we have Brian Kelly as well, formerly of Rugby Canada, who is going to come in and talk to us about marketing, which is really important. So these people will definitely, we hope they give you basically inspire some ideas and basically give you the confidence that you guys can go out and do these things yourselves. It's not that scary, and it's important to know why we need to do them. As we said, we're going to always have the worksheets coming out before the webinars. Additionally, we're going to provide some supplementary resources the next day or so with the webinars that we will upload and make available on the PSO website. So that's Rugby Manitoba, Rugby Sask, Alberta, depending on where you are, but the content will probably be the same on each website. So that's fine. So, and at the end of the course, we will try and get some comprehensive documents summarizing all of this and combining some of the older club manuals and stuff that we have found in the old archives of Saskatchewan Rugby. So we will be able to share those with you. They just need a bit of updating as we go through this. So we do encourage you to do your worksheets with the rest of your club management, especially, and anyone that may be management one day. And please share the resources, because they're useless if they just sit on a website. Please make sure that we share these. Just briefly, obviously, one of the reasons everybody's here is the fact that, well, you need to get things done, and sometimes things don't always get done. And I guess the importance of simplicity is probably some of this. And this is just something that popped up in a rugby podcast that I was listening to with Eddie Jones, and it's from the book Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, and it's just the Fogg behavior model. So B equals MAT. So when a behavior gets done, it's a combination of motivation, ability, and the right prompt at the right time. So for any behavior to get done, something has to fall to the right of that action line. If anything doesn't get done, it falls on the left of that. So just keep this in mind when you are designing processes and designing jobs, that when things aren't getting done, what can we do to sort of either make it easier for people to do on the ability side, or how do we motivate people to do it more so? So, and then provide a prompt that gets people to do it. So it's definitely something that's more out of interest, but I find it very useful in designing some of the things that Rugby Manitoba goes through. So, okay, just finally, I just want to talk about where you should go for help. the best thing about this thing, and some people put that in the chat earlier, is going to be that we have the chance to network with every club on the prairies right now. I think we have about 50 clubs across Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. The saying that a rising tide raises all ships applies here. You know, if clubs are getting better across the prairies, it's just going to provide better rugby for everybody. It's going to improve the status of our game, and so I encourage you to make use of the connections you make during the next 5 weeks. And you know, when this COVID sort of thing is finally out of the way, I definitely encourage you to reach out, and get some games going. That'd be great. Finally, your PSO is here as well to help you. So if you are, whichever province you may reside in, please, at any time, if you have any questions, any concerns, reach out to one of the representatives from your respective province. But that should basically cover it. I'll hand over to the real star tonight, and we'll give it over to Scott, and we'll talk. Scott will take you through just a club health check right now, so we can assess where we're at.
All right. Well, thanks very much for that, Patrick. Thanks, everybody. I'm far from an expert in any of this. I consider I like to be a facilitator in learning and in improving. I've had the opportunity to work with a dozen or so countries on their health checks, strategic planning, and resource development. So through force of experience, I've learned a few things, but I wouldn't say that I'm an academic expert in organizational management or that kind of thing. So that said, there'll be hopefully a bit we can share with you and a bit of exercises we can all do and that you can do regularly with your clubs. As the others said, there's lots of resources out there. We've cut the tip of the iceberg in terms of the documents and manuals and pages and pages of things that you can use for volunteer recruitment, for all of that kind of thing. So we're going to touch on a bit of it, and if it looks lean, ask us to fatten it up. And if it seems a lot, you can always trim it down yourselves. So club health check, we're not going to get many answers in this short discussion, or we might get some, but what we need to do from time to time is check our health, just like an athlete needs to be checked once in a while. And how do we know we have problems if we don't? So there's lots of books that talk about the trends that dying organizations go through. And dying is a rude term, and I hope not to use it for any of us, but let's say that an organization in decline, it has a few indicators. One of the indicators is very hard to find anyone to take on leadership roles. So if you say, hey, I'm president because no one else would be, I'm the volunteer in this role because no one else would be, and I can't find my replacement, or it was my turn, and I didn't want to do it, that's usually an indicator of an organization that needs to have a look at itself and find other avenues to improving that. And we'll talk about all the improvements for the health later on. We're not healing it now because that's a big meaty part of later sessions that we're having other weeks. So one of the fundamental questions to ask about whether or not you're healthy: do you have goals? Are you achieving them? Now, if a goal is getting a rugby team on the field, and you're getting a rugby team on the field, great. If that's your only goal, then that might be a bit disappointing, because a rugby club is much more than just, did we get players on the field? Are we improving them? One of the indicators for that, for health past that, are we getting players on the field, and does it look like that's not going to be a problem? If it's hard getting those players on the field and you're struggling to get enough players for the field, that's becoming a problem. And now there's something to address. So it's whatever you see challenges, whatever your worries are usually an indication of, I need to spend some time in this area. Notice a lot of you had mentioned volunteer recruitment, retention, and recruitment of players, or more, bringing more people to your club as big issues for you to have. And we will get to those in later sessions. But that would be where you have those issues. Do you have a long-term goal for that? A lot of us build year-by-year goals and season goals. So it'd be interesting if we could just punch into the chat how many of you have, just go yes if you have and no if you don't. How many of you have a plan that is longer than 3 years for your club? A vision for your club that's longer than 3 years from today? Yeah, handful of yeses, handful of nos. It's always on the to-do list. Yeah. Okay, so we have some yeses and nos, some don't know. I've seen long-term plans that sit on the shelf. The next question is, for those of you who had a long-term plan, now only, so they set a 5-year plan 3 years ago. So 5-year plans are great. 5-year plans are what we call more the vision plan. We're looking farther into the future because we have a picture of what our club could look like. And now we've got to take steps to get there. And what we do is review those often. So a 5-year plan, wonderful. After a couple of years, great to reshape that and go again. So a good handful of yeses and nos. The women have a plan, the men don't. That just seems typical, doesn't it, for that one club? You know, of course. So we have an issue. Some of us have long-term plans, some of us don't. Does anyone have a 10-year plan? Yeah. So I'd expect a lot of no's. Just yes if you have one. 10-year plans are kind of what we call dream plans, way off in the future. What could we be? How big are we going to be? What leadership do we have? How many players of different ages do we have? And that 10-year plan takes multiple stages to accomplish. But that's when you sit down with an organization and get to recruit them all around it. So if we don't have plans, it's really hard to measure if we're reaching them, but it's also really hard to recruit volunteers and people towards those things. If your goal is getting players on the field, and you're getting players on the field, they get on the field and then they go. But if your goal is much bigger than that, if your goal is to recruit more players, if your goal is to build up a social structure for your club so people are in touch with each other year round, if your goal is to make the club a particularly welcoming place because you're actually putting supports outside of the game for them, right? You've got family supports, you've got supports for elderly, you know, injured players supports. If you build up all these other things, if those are part of your long-term goals, right, then recruitment becomes easier if they see that they're joining not just a team. So, I'm sorry, just getting messages from the gang. So part of it is we have a strategic plan or not is one of the indicators of health. The document that you have, that workbook that we're going to go through, we're not going to go through it. You have the opportunity to go through it. We're not going to read from the workbook here, but you have the opportunity to go through it. From page 5 to 9 are some document checklists. These are the kinds of things that indicate that your organization has the functioning documents, right? It does. Do you have a constitution? Do you know how elections are held? Do you have financial reports that everyone can understand and isn't just written on a bar napkin? Do you have do you have a strategic plan? Do you have conflict resolution? You know, do you have a way of dealing with disciplinary issues within your club? So all of these kinds of steps are important documents to have. Page 9 on, those are indicators of kind of the health of an organization, and you'll have your opportunity to flip through that at your leisure. And some of those aren't relevant for us. Some of those are, if you're a tiny club, if you're a one-team club, at the moment, it would be understandable if your entire executive are current players, and they've always been the same executive, and you haven't had much chance to pass it on. You don't have outside volunteers or partnerships. That would be understandable if you're a newer club or you're a one-team club. But we would say those kinds of things aren't very sustainable, right? If your players are the ones filling in all the executive roles, then when they're done playing, they're probably done the executive roles. They're probably in the executive roles because you couldn't keep people around to fill those roles. You couldn't recruit from outside current players. So they're basically saying, well, we have to line the field, right? We have to wash the jerseys, so we'll take on the functioning tasks of an organization, but we're not really here as long-term leadership and governance. If you have governance and administration people from outside your team because they like being involved, that's fantastic. That's kind of one of the indicators of health, is that, you know, we have a treasurer who's never played rugby, kind of example, right? That means people like being involved in your organization. So do you have a strategic plan? Does it work? The next question is, do you think it'll keep working, or do you see it at risk? Right, that's one of the health checks. With being able to be resilient right now is a great test for clubs because we're not together on the field. So have you found ways to maintain connection with your whole club in a healthy way, in a proactive way? Are they feeling still attached to you, or have they drifted away? And that would be something, that would be a test of the resilience in this current time. And then lastly, does the leadership like their role? right? If leaders are enjoying the role they play with the club, then they're likely to stick around. It's likely to be easy to recruit people to those roles. And that means your future is going to be more stable because people like being in those jobs. If people feel stuck or they're not enjoying that, then that's another good indicator. How do we find that out? How often do you ask? When's the last time anyone asked their executive, hey, are all of you enjoying this? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like this job or that job, or running this tournament or doing this? And if everyone says 1, we hate doing this, then it's time to say, okay, let's do the things that we're going to enjoy more, right? Let's pick something else about our club then, because if we're grinding, we're going to die. We're not going to be able to recruit people. We're not going to want to stay in our roles. So ask your executive, ask your volunteers frequently how much they're enjoying what they're doing. We're going to head to breakout rooms in a second with a couple of questions, and then we're going to come back for some question and answer. We're just catching the tip of the iceberg with this because it's about the health check, not about all the answers. So we're going to give you a chance to do a little bit of a health checkup sharing exercise in your breakout rooms, and then come back hopefully with some questions about what to do about it or some ideas of where you're at. But so we have the questions fired up. Patrick, I think you have them. Someone has them ready to post. If your conversation, yeah, so Graham or Patrick does. If your conversation goes off of the question into other avenues about your club that are unhealthy, that's fine, or are healthy, great. We're here to share ideas. We're here for your exercise, not to answer our questions. If you don't like the way the conversation is going in your room, just say, hey, we had a question we were supposed to go on, right? Because some of you may have, it might turn into bar talk and that kind of thing, which is great. We'll save that also for later. But if we look at those questions, are we enjoying what we're doing, which is a leadership succession planning thing? And then the lead one we're going to ask you is going to be, Patrick Graham, you have it fired up. Yeah, is it going to go in the chat or is it going to go?
Yeah, Scott, the questions are in the chat. Andrew's popped them in there already. And what we'll do, Pete's organised the breakout rooms. We have 10 rooms of 5 or 6 roughly. And as soon as you're ready, Scott, let him know and he'll hit fire. Sure.
So essentially, there's your questions. It's when was your club? Can you picture a time when your club was at its healthiest, strongest, most vibrant? Right. What did that look like? What was going on in that situation? And what does it look like when it's at its peak? And deeper to that question, not just what it looked like on the field. So most healthy isn't our on-field results. That can be a result of a healthy club working well together. They can have a great on-field. There's a lot of successes on the field that clubs that died after winning championships, right? So they weren't healthy clubs, they were good teams. So how long ago was it? When was your healthiest time? What did it look like? And share those ideas around each other. Now, for some of you, it might be right now. Everyone's going to want to hear about what that looks like. So trigger the breakout rooms. We'll bounce around if there's any other questions and then come back. We're going to have a look at what healthy looks like. Off. Some neat discussions, similar experiences for each of us. And if they'll type in those, a brief capturing of what it looked like when clubs were healthy at their healthiest in the chat section, then we can get some common threads about what it looks like for a healthy club. It was interesting. I'll let people type that in. I'll give them 30 seconds here. Unless it's a prop, you can have a couple minutes.
Hey, now.
Hey, I've grown into propping. I love that position now. We got one in the chat. Some people might have pushed leave the meeting instead of leave the breakout room, so they'll be looking to come back in if the admins will keep an eye out for them and let them in.
only lost a couple, Scott, but we'll keep an eye on it.
We'll keep an eye on it. So while some people finish their typing in, right away we have a good theme: high participation numbers, multiple sides, membership. Yeah, and good leadership. So strong junior programs linked to senior. So we know we coach lots and lots of high schools across the prairies. There's lots of schools playing rugby. That connection to club, we also know is an issue, and we'll talk about that recruitment and fixing that link in a later session. To me, it's not a great surprise. Even New Zealand keeps about 12% of their players after the age of 18. Right, they play through school and then they played their rugby there. They're done. So I'm interested to see that there's a few comments here about how it was when it was a strong social scene. I would agree. I think when rugby it was fun to be with the people as much as be on the field. We used to have members in our club that had never played rugby. They just liked hanging around us. And some of them said, "Okay, well, I'll finally play some rugby. You've bothered me enough. I'll get on the field." And they shouldn't have. Maybe they were fine off the field and just being a paying club member. But I can certainly see that return to a good social environment. There's a lot of reasons why that might have happened. Some of it might be drink driving laws might have discouraged the habits of the 80s and 90s, which is not a bad thing to discourage. But there might be other reasons for it. I think looking at if we think good leadership and a strong social environment for the club are indicators of it being healthy, then one of our strategic goals should probably be our social side. Those things don't just happen. So getting to those strategic goal ideas is important. If we see what it looks like to be healthy, then we have a target to aim for. If it's about big playing numbers, at least that's a target you can aim for and do some things to recruit to that. And I'm just going to give a shout out to the Assassins Rugby Club in Winnipeg, who made a fundamental and phenomenal change in the direction that clubs were going in the prairies at the time and in Winnipeg, and turned it around significantly, and now have strong participation numbers, good links to their juniors, a lot of things going well for them. But they put out a real effort and put a strategic plan together, and hopefully some of you got to hear from them, and we'll hear more from them at later events. It's rare for a WASP to give a shout out like that to the Assassins, but I have to give credit where it's due. So many of them are tempted to spit at the screen at the moment, but I had to say it. So want to say that now. Are there any questions that popped out of that people thought that this is a burning one? You got a hand. If you've never used Zoom before, you go down to reactions. There's applause and the like there. Where's the put up hand? Sorry, I've been Googling for so long, Google Meeting for so long.
It's in the participants tab.
It is, yeah. Participants tab, yeah. So you can find a way to put up your hand there under that. But if not, just feel free to unmute and say, yeah, here's something you noticed or something you thought was different about your healthy club than other people's.
I'll share. In St. Albert and Alberta, we definitely had a really committed group of volunteers that have aged, our old boys essentially, and thinking back to the number of events and tournaments that we've hosted in the past. And if someone said, "Oh, hey, like, could your club be a facility for the Women's Rugby World Cup or something right now?" No, we could not. Like, we don't have the capacity to support an event like that like we used to 10, 15 years ago.
And that hosting, I remember St. Albert's growth at the time. St. Albert, a big part of their success and their popularity was they were a big host. They held major events for Canada and the like. And yeah, we looked forward to going to St. Albert for a game or a tournament.
Game or a tournament, major event, we'd be challenged right now.
Yeah. And is that mostly because of the leadership capacity is kind of aged on and there hasn't been that kind of thing to host for a long time?
Who's going to do it? Who's going to do all these things?
Yeah, they get tired. Yeah, and I hear that, and I think one thing that happened with a lot of clubs in the prairies that I saw, and I've had the good fortune of playing through the prairies since early '80s. There was great leadership for a long time, and things just rolled well. And that leadership seemed to be the same leadership in some places for a long time. I know a club in Regina that had, I think, whether they were the president or not, this person was always doing all the work. Or seemed to always be the one we saw. So eventually that leaves, and that's succession planning. So another big question for us about healthy clubs is, do you have a strategic plan? Do you have a succession plan? Can you foresee your leadership 10 years from now? And if you can't see who your leaders might be 10 years from now, can you see them at least 5 years from now? And if 5 years from now it looks like it's still the ones you have, then it's maybe time to do some work. Great to stay in the job if you love doing it. But even if you build more and more supports and delegate some responsibilities and build other mini leaders around key leaders, then once they step aside, your continuity is there. And I think for many of us, we lost leadership continuity when people got tired. So check to see if they're enjoying it. Another question, not just are they enjoying it, how many more years do they want to do? It's a fair question to ask a president, a treasurer, the volunteer who washes the jerseys, anyone. And we'll get to that under volunteer recruitment. If they don't know that there's a time limit on what they do, they might feel a bit pinned, and that hurts enjoyment. Whereas if they say, hey, 2 more years and you can find a replacement, absolutely. Well, then I'm going to enjoy 2 years of this. I can give it hard for 2 years. So some of the measures of health are how we feel, not just what's happening. I think that's my time, guys. So I thank you all for taking part in that, and we'll get to some answers for that stuff. But have a look at the questions from pages 5 to I think it's 15. Some of the descriptions at your leisure, and see what that describes about your club.
Yes, Scott. Thanks very much. That was a really insightful, and certainly in the breakout room I was in briefly, there were some really good examples of when things were good, and particular attention and focus around engaging alumni, which is kind of what Kendra shared there as well. Is how do you keep people involved once they're stopped playing? I remember when I was coaching the Hornets Rugby Club, the dilemma that you were facing is that all the players were board members, and then you may not pick a particular player on the weekend, and then what does that do to your working relationship? So these are some of the conversations that we were having. But I would encourage us to continue having dialogue and building relationships across the prairies. We're going to hand on to Pete Houlihan now with Alberta Junior Rugby, and Pete's going to kind of work us through some value-based decision makings, and I know he's got a couple of cool slides and things he's put together. So I'll hand over to Pete. Thanks, Peter.
Perfect. Thank you, Graham. And whoever had 40 minutes in that Graham mentioned the Hornets, you win the pool. So congrats. Okay, here I just got to share my screen. I'm a presentation guy. I don't think I can rap straight like Scott did for my 15 minutes. So I'll use pictures and visuals to help me out. I want to start with this. This is a rugby parent asked me or said this to me a while back, and it really stuck with me, especially as I've transitioned from a player to a coach and now working with junior rugby. I'll let it sit there for a couple seconds. It's probably a bit of a cheap shot, to be honest, but it really did help me think about what values we want to portray with rugby and our clubs and who most of our members tend to be. So we'll move on. Values, obviously, core beliefs that transcend the specific situations and the way we behave and make decisions. So Wayne Goldsmith, legendary sports organizer in management, had these big 10 values that I think lots of organizations tend to use. They're pretty generic. But the big thing that, I wanted to make clear was that like lots of huge organizations have these kind of goals. So, right, Google, right, talks to the favorite one from Google here is fast is better than slow. You can be serious without a suit. So it really talks to all that stuff you hear about Google being a place for the employees. They get to create, and it's seen in their values here. We'll move on. So again, some more value-based. So I thought this was interesting. Skydiving is something I would never do. But obviously these people all share some sort of value set that makes them want to jump out of a plane and create this big formation. So again, to establish this optimal environment for diving out of a plane, we have to have the certain value of risk taking, of daredevilness, whatever you want to say. And it's got to be widely shared and communicated with everybody. That's how you attract all these who I would call crazies to come jump out of a plane. And then if we look at more rugby specific examples, which is probably the bread and butter of what I want to talk about, this is the big one everybody's heard about, legacy. I think probably if everybody turned around in this call, they've had that book on their bookshelf. I can see it if I look to my left here. And we all know these kind of rugby values that we all love to say we do, right? We sweep the sheds. We always tweet about it. That's the new big thing I've noticed. Sacrifice, right? They're all really good, easy things to have. One thing I really like is what Erin Kennedy's doing with her girls rugby program. And if you see, these are her values for girls rugby on the right-hand side. So pretty clear, pretty succinct. And there's actually no mention of rugby in this. It's pretty general about making these women, these girls, better people, better world citizens, better club members. And I think that's the real key to it. And I think that's what makes her program tick. Tricky mouse here. That's what makes her program tick, is that she embeds this in everything, right? The leaders are all strong female women who are successful, right? Her business partners, you look at their website, you learn about them and all the great things they've done. So really important that we look at that. And then the last thing before we hit some breakout rooms is the critical step. We can all write this down, like Scott said at the start. We don't want it to sit in an office or on a computer shared drive. We got to live it. We got to be able to do the things that we're going to say are our values. So, right, if it's being on time, I saw someone shared me a document from Chelsea FC where they fine players over $1,000 if they're a minute late for training, and then it doubles. So obviously timekeeping would be one of their big values, I suppose. And they live to that. So they have a kitty and it goes to that. So again, do you broadcast it to your followers? Do you tell everybody what you do? Is that what's going to get a volunteer? Is it someone who wants to do good? I'll give you a really good example, and I notice there's a couple of Canucks on, so if they're in your group, maybe you can talk to them, but they always do blood drives. I don't know how often. I think some guys probably do it every chance they can get, after their blood's replenished, but it's a really interesting thing that, geez, I wish, my club did a blood drive every once in a while. And, I could go by myself and sign up as, X club, but I don't. And maybe that's, again, something that I should be better at and be that leader for my club, because that's, again, a really cool value that the Canucks have put into action. So maybe if you have Darcy, or I think Luke was in one of the groups, maybe ask them about that, because that's a really, really cool initiative that they do. So Andrew, did you get those questions sorted out? So some really generic questions here, but let's talk about what are some of your values as a club. Personally, what do you do to make sure that's shown through your actions, through what you do at the club? And then we'll come back and chat about some more of this wonderful stuff. I see some friendly faces. And Mr. Gallant always likes a good chin wag, so maybe he has something to say.
The Canucks under the bus already, so Darcy, you may as well follow up.
What do you want to know, Pete? What do you want to know?
I'm here to learn, teach.
Basically, we were just talking about the core values. You played with the Canucks as well. Just, I don't have the wording, but just being a sustainable social side has always been number one on the list. And I would say over my 25 years connected, that at times it probably hurt us more than it's helped us, but it's still there. It's still in our meetings. Our president still, that's his number one thing, is that we want to be topside on and off the field. And I think now rugby needs to really embrace that. If I want to be a part of a club my whole life, it has to be more. I can only play rugby until I'm 40. Then maybe I'll coach for a little while. what's rugby going to do for me when I'm 60 other than me just being a fan? You still want me connected. And I think that's a huge thing that our club and clubs are struggling to do, is keep people involved when they're done playing, or keep them playing a little bit longer. So like you said, the blood drive's one thing that a player in our club has done since he was young. And now we, on a regular, I believe it's 8-week term, we have 25 guys that do it. And it's just something that it's a regular thing now. It's a race to sign up because we can only have 25. And it's been awesome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Anybody else have anything to share? Hey, Scott, you unmuted. Maybe you wanna chime in there.
This is a big passionate one for me. So I work on the values with a few other clubs and countries as well, and about how they can make, like Aaron Kennedy does with the girls in rugby, sell your values and rugby will thrive. One of my predecessors said, if we can, Tom Jones, a great ambassador of the game, said, if we can promote our values first, if we got the world to embrace our values because they see it happening, we'll be the #1 sport on the planet. Everyone will want their kids to play that game. And when Pierre de Coubertin added rugby to the Olympics, it was because he'd visited England and saw the values that were being instilled in people and said, that's what the Olympics is for. So when rugby was in the Olympics in the 1920s, it was because of the values and what it gives people. So I'm a big fan of it. So we've done this exercise at a couple of national development summits in the US when they held those, where we had a room and people were invited into the breakout room for an hour and shared their ideas of how to promote the values. And then we gathered them and shared them the next year. So I've got a one-pager that I'll throw into the chat about some of the values. I think a lot of people mentioned when the game is fun, right? That the value seems strong when we're having fun. You know, people are respecting each other and they're doing well with it. So what keeps the game fun? Well, you know, we used to have a sing-along once in a while, and some of the songs are worth repeating. Some of them we might need to change now if we're going to stick to our values. But you know, songs. So we introduced this in the Caribbean, and now there's a few youth teams when they face each other. When Jamaica meets Guyana or Trinidad and Tobago at junior men's, they'll have a sing-off after. They've been practicing their song. They're pretty excited about it. So that's one of them. In Jamaica, when they were trying to promote rugby into new schools, they called it Rugby Against Violence. They weren't promoting a rugby team. They're saying, no, we're promoting the Rugby Against Violence program. And what does that mean? Well, in this school, the rugby players are committed. They sign a commitment that they will stop bullying if they see it, that they will stop disrespect between students if they see it. Not violently, but they'll just say that's not cool. And we had principals saying, hey, I need that Rugby Against Violence program in my school. How do I get it? So, but they made the players take that oath and say, how do you do this? Let's strategize about how you can actually reduce these problems in your school and the violence and bullying you see. And the rugby teams had an impact, enough of an impact that, you know, a lot of very troubled schools wanted rugby. So how do we keep those values alive? Heard a couple of ideas about having those culture keepers, having people assigned in your club to do it, so that you don't just let it float by. Have people who pay attention to it week in, week out. We could run a whole long session on the values, I think, but I'm thrilled that people want to do something about it. I'm going to post that list now and stop talking.
Yeah, Scott, there's some really good examples there, and you know, thanks for sharing. And I'm sure that, you know, just some of the chat there, I was giggling when I read the Banff one, more clout than the mayor. That's good. I like that. I think actually the mayor at Banff, her son actually played rugby for Alberta and played for the Wolfpack team a couple of years ago. So thanks everybody so far. Scott just loads up here. You know, this is we've kind of reached our allocated time. As we said at the beginning here, we're trying to create, you know, good relationships and partnerships with clubs across the prairies. Hopefully, maybe ask some questions which would stimulate and generate some thought. And obviously, as you've kind of do come up with your thoughts, just provide you with some tools that you can fill out, which is obviously the workbook, which has been emailed to you or you've downloaded from the chat here today. That kind of concludes the first webinar. But obviously, we're not just going to run off. We've kind of we'll be on here for another sort of 15 to 20 minutes to just to, have some informal Q&A, some chat, a bit of a social per se. Should everybody want to stick around, or if there's anything specifically that people would want to share or ask questions about, we would more than likely to obviously like to have you ask questions. If anybody has any. Now, there was a quote here, and Wade, if you're still on, and maybe just circle back to you, and there's something you've written here. I just maybe just for some clarification and maybe share your thoughts. You put, you blame millennials. The culture of rugby has to make a comeback. Maybe if you're willing just to unmic yourself and maybe just speak, that would be great.
Yeah, hi, my name is Wade. Yeah, I don't know if it's when I said that jokingly about blaming millennials. I think things have changed. I mean, you always hear that things were different when we were growing up, but that always seems to be the case. But now things really seem to change. I mean, when we were growing up, we drank from the garden hose. You don't see anybody doing that anymore. We didn't see you wouldn't see anybody riding in the cabs of trucks, bouncing around the streets and stuff. Like, you don't see any of that anymore. And I think, when I started playing rugby, and I started late, there was a lot to do with the camaraderie, and everybody who played was kind of the same, the same culture. Everybody was just played hard, had a good time together. We're just a bunch of fun-loving people who also enjoyed being fit and traveling and meeting new people, and really enjoyed the game of rugby. And somehow, and again, I have no idea. I'm just guessing. I was out of town, didn't play for such a long time. I don't know what happened, but it was thriving. It was big. It was popular, or as much as it could be in a hockey town, right? We live in Canada. And then in the last few years, it's just everything's changed. I mean, it really was sad to see what's happened to Snafu. So when I say the culture has to come back, I got to be careful what I say. I don't want to, say the wrong thing. It just like to see some of the old, I don't know if you can call it values, but some of the old culture come back, and those types of people who love and enjoy rugby. And I think that's what it's going to take to have it come back. I think you need those kinds of people. And if it's not those kinds of people, well, then it's going to die. And is it a matter of going out and finding those kinds of people? I mean, they say people don't change, only names and faces do. So there must be still those people out there. Maybe we're just not doing the same at going out and finding them, or there's not as many people with the time to go out and coach in schools or promote the game. I don't know. I can't even run 100 meters now. So I don't know. Maybe in another life, I could do something for rugby. Thanks.
Yeah, Wade, thanks very much for elaborating on that. I think you probably, the generation that are on this call probably, we probably remember some of our best times and wish we could recreate them. So thanks for adding a bit of clarity on that. David Warren, I see you've got your hand up. Fire away, Dave.
Yeah, just kind of a quick address to Wade, and nothing personal at all. And it's a global thing. I'm English, played in the UK since, 32, 33 years ago. And seen that environment change. But I have found there's very much the old boys and then the new sort of more professional side coming through. And it's how do you keep up with that? I mean, back in the day, going out on my socials when I'm 20, 21, there wasn't the video phone. You're not getting the social media. Yeah, you kind of give them free reign. And now it's everything you do is going to be out there, and it's going to follow you through life. Because once it's on the internet, it's never gone. So how do you handle that, and how do you grow the sport with that to keep, the fun side that Wade was referring to, but keep it within a safe environment?
As you said, there's been some big society changes. I know that we just a bit of a story one down on tour in Kelowna. We had a kangaroo court with the juniors, and it was good fun. But it was a strict, like, there was nothing going on. It was just a junior kangaroo court and lots of fun and activities. But it was just put your phone away for an hour, just leave it away. Nothing needs to go on film here. Just leave it alone. So, yeah, it's good. Amelia, we'll just kind of move to you next. Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
No, I just had a thought on kind of thinking about where our club was strongest, which was about 8 or 9 years ago to now. And one of the two biggest changes that happened was our club enforced registration, which, funny enough, 10 years ago, it was a little fast and loose with whether or not you were registered, whether you paid dues, on and on and on. And our club actually started enforcing that. And that caused a bit of an exodus with our old boys who didn't want to pay to register. And then the second thing our club changed, we used to have bar tabs available, and we changed that to having, you could prepay, so you could put cash on your tab and then use that later, but you couldn't run a deficit. And a lot of people did not like that their $1,000 bar tab that they owed the club was no longer going to be allowed to keep accumulating money. So in terms of change of culture, I mean, these things have to happen. You have to be insured, but those things had to happen for our club to financially have any chance of succeeding. But it did leave a huge culture shift in what people were looking for at our club.
No, thanks for sharing. Yeah, it's definitely changed times. I was going to say, if you run up $1,000 bar tab, I'm going to the Pirates.
Yeah, I'll be there next.
Ollie, I'll just kind of go. I know I've got some things to share. I'll just give you the order just for the way they've just come in. Ollie, if we can have you, and then on to Janet, and then to Darcy in that particular order. Oh, you're just on mute, Ollie. Sorry, mate.
Sorry about that. Just real quick to answer to Wade. So I'm 32, millennial. And I think there is definitely a divergent point between the young kids coming out right now and the old boys. And for those of us that kind of saw, like, I went to high school in Calgary, was a Saracens club kid before I moved to Banff. And so for sure, there's definitely been a large change in terms of go to the clubhouse, have drinks, get on it. But it's one where for us, where we found great engagement with our younger kids is we don't make every Saturday after a game compulsory to go out. It's one where, we'll do home games, as, Safari or, Cowboys and, First Nations. And, when we do our trip to Red Deer or to Lethbridge, then we'll make a big deal of it. But I think it's one where you can still have 8 to 10 people going out for a beverage at the end of the night. You don't have to force the drinking culture, because a lot of the kids that are 18 to 22, it's not the same intrinsic value that they place on going out and getting shit-faced. So it's just one where you kind of have to adjust it, make it a little bit more of an event, and there'll be more engagement for it. And that's it.
Thanks, Ollie.
Can I say something?
Yeah,
Hello?
of course. Yeah. Wait, if you want to go, and then we'll head on to Janet. I know that Ollie's kind of response was directed to kind of a comment you'd addressed earlier, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I just wanted to say that first of all, I'm not an old boy. Harlan's an old boy. He doesn't look it, but he's an old boy. And I just wanted to say that I wasn't trying to say that the entire culture of rugby hinged on partying. I wasn't trying to say that at all. I was trying to say there's something missing, and it seemed to be. I mean, of course, that was part of it, but that wasn't all of it. I can't put my finger on it, but no, of course, I'm not saying that, that's the be all and end all. I mean, you can't play hungover, right?
Yeah, totally. No, thanks, Wade. Janet?
Of course you can play hungover. Everybody has done that. I'm just going to build on on what these other people have said, and I am an old boy, and I have proof of that because Carl Fix called me and said the guys are going out, and I'm one of the guys, and I had to come out with them. So I'm an old boy. Anyway, way back when I played, the partying was the culture, and like somebody said, I see it sort of shifting away from that, and I wonder if we can build that camaraderie by doing some different things. Some of those, blood drive is not a good bonding thing, although it's a really awesome thing to do. But community events where we all band together, and I don't even have something for you as an example, but some sort of a community, or the bullying thing, or whatever it is. Because I see the culture shifting a little bit, and we need to adapt with that. There's room for partying, for sure there is, but maybe we just need to adapt a wee bit.
Yeah, I think when we generally have a greater cause than ourselves, I think it definitely pulls people together. And there's been a couple of good examples shared tonight around that. So Janet, thanks for sharing that. Darcy.
I just want to kind of say that I'll play devil's advocate because I know I'm not super old, but I've been around for 25 years. And the last few years, I always think that there's a reason why kids and young guys or young girls get involved in sports. They are lonely. They're on their phones all the time because they're lonely. I truly believe that. And I'll admit, we made a rule in our club because I want guys to talk to me. You're 18, I might not be fully connected, but I do care. I want to know you. And we made a rule. We had an hour rule with the phones. And we also made a rule we have a strong old boys group that we have guys that make conscious efforts to talk to the young guys, not on their phones, to make a connection. The young people are lonely. There's no doubt in my mind. They need rugby as much as we need them. That's my feeling. Phones are like a death to society, in my opinion. They wouldn't be playing sports if they didn't want to be a part of something. We need to learn how to embrace them, and they'll be connected. They'll probably overwhelm us with how much they want to give us once they're connected.
No, thanks for sharing that, Darcy. I know when I was involved with the Red Deer Titans Club back in 2005, there was one guy that played. His attitude was, "I've paid my $400. You have to be my friends." He basically, bought an association, which I find great. Jarrett.
Yeah, just kind of listening to the theme here about kind of bridging the gap between the older and the younger generations. One thing that normally, that I would find would bridge a gap with anything is communication. And has anyone asked the question to these younger people? What is it going to take for you to want to be around the club more? Is there anything that you think can change? Asking the questions to this younger group. You can blame millennials or whatever you want to do. Well, maybe we have to look in the mirror and blame ourselves because we're the ones that are around here already, and create an environment that they want to, be a part of. And if it's creating their environment, then maybe we have to do that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Jared, do you have any maybe any examples or does anybody have any good examples of maybe some of the communication that they've had with their younger players to find out, what they want out of their experience? I know for us and Rugby Alberta as an organisation, that's our vision, is to make rugby the best sporting experience. And how do we go around doing that? So if anybody has any communications examples, I'd love to hear them.
Sorry for it to be me again. We've seen some success when people have exit interviews for their high school programs. Hey, you played school at rugby. We're not going to wait for you to come to the club. We're going to have an interview with all of you now. Here's a questionnaire to hand in. Do you plan to continue playing? Why not? We'd like to know. And that's the ones who are already playing rugby in high school. I haven't seen many examples of how we tap into people who aren't playing and find out, you're not playing rugby. Why not? But finding out why they leave us after a few years of playing in high school is worth checking into, because if we could just keep the high school kids, we'd all be much healthier.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Scott. Some good ideas. Derek.
Yeah, just thinking about that. So I'm in a unique situation where I'm just I've been coaching the same group of kids since they were, 11, 12. Now they're early teens, or you get to, 16, 17. One thing I found that's interesting about that group of kids is they're a little different than the millennials. They're very social creatures. I think more so than the other ones. So the camaraderie around the club or around what you're doing is important to them. So, I've always tried to put like little team challenges out there where they can work out, problems, or, maybe we'll go help at a do a bottle drive or something like that to help the club, those sorts of things. And what I try to do coaching wise is check in with them and find out what they're liking about practice or not liking, and maybe for one kid it's just adjusting for them, but if you hear the same kind of comments over and over again, adjusting your whole thought process and changing and moving on with it. I find, and so culture wise, I just think that they're going to be a little bit more engaged as they get older and want to be part of a community more than I don't know how to pick on millennials, but when I finished playing, I watched all the young guys come in and they kind of just play, they'd go work out, then they'd go home. And I don't know whether that's the fault of the club or the older folks that were around them that didn't give them time or space to discuss what they wanted out of rugby. But it just seemed like that's kind of what they were doing. This new group coming up, I think, is a totally different animal. It reminds me of when I played. The group, like the friendships they have, like the friendships I had when I played back in the 80s and 90s. So, anyways, just my 2 cents.
Derek, I have a quick question for you. Like with that group, when they're not in rugby, who are they hanging out with? Are they hanging out with each other? Because I think that's something that.
This group, a lot of them hang out in groups of the same group. They're not all the same school, but online, they might play each other or whatever. But there's a big group of them that go to the same school, so they tend to hang out together, and they bring in other kind of subgroups as well. And so every year I'll get like another 3 or 4 kids that are subgroups of a different group of whatever, but they kind of all communicate, how much fun they're having at rugby. So
yeah, I guess it's a common sort of theme in this sort of space. Like every sport deals with this right now. And I mean, even speaking to my counterparts in Australia, where I'm from in Canberra, they look to what are the activities that are competing with rugby. I mean, back in the 90s, the 80s, there wasn't online gaming. There wasn't, as much focus on unorganized sports. So, I guess right now there's such a competition for things to do that's just something we have to be cognizant of. It's really good that you're having a success story and getting those guys really tight, because you just pick your brain about that a bit more.
Well, honestly just watching the age group growing up, even within the different sports and hockey, that sort of thing, there's pockets of friendships that have lasted quite a long time, longer than their teams have. Like some kids I remember ever growing up with, they're still good friends and they haven't played on a team for years, but that camaraderie has stuck with them. So it's just something to think about while you're going out there in the trenches, and just making sure that they're happy and they're enjoying themselves and that sort of thing. I find it's probably the most important thing.
Thanks for sharing that, Derek. Scott, I'll just maybe invite you just for a closing remark, and then that'll conclude the our first webinar. Just prior to Scott wrapping up, there will be a separate link for next week. So if you've registered already for this week, I will email you the link for next week, and then we'll also post another one publicly. So if there's other members of your club or your associations or community that we'd value for being on next week's webinar, I've got a couple of really good speakers lined up, and so if you would like to have other people join them, please share the link with them. Scott.
Well, I just want to applaud everyone for being here. You're already giving so much of your time to your clubs. You're already passionate about the game. You're looking for more opportunities, more ways to do it. if you're here, you're part of the solution, and we look forward to hearing more from you. And I really look forward to seeing some 5 years from now, a lot of thriving clubs and some big tournaments again. I missed the snafus, the big rugby fests. When Snafu went to sevens, it turned off a whole bunch of us. So, so thank you, thank you, especially getting to my age and size. Thanks all for your comments, Wade. Thanks for sharing. Thanks everyone else who put their hands up. We want to hear more from you, either in the chat or whatever. Let's keep the dialogue going.